Hey, everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar. And today we are going to serve the bottom end. And there's no one better to serve it than my guest, Steve Mackey. He's a first call bass player from Nashville. He's been in town a long time. Let me just tell you, this guy is hilarious. He's a really sweet guy, and I'm really excited to hang with him. So a couple of quick announcements. I want to thank our mutual friend, Joe West, young Joe West. Thank you very much for hooking us up. Also, make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com/subscribe and subscribe to the audio and the video of the show. If you're already watching us on YouTube, hit the subscribe button down there and the bell, and thank you. All right, let me tell you about Steve Mackey. This guy is so cool. A meeting with Rock and Roll Hall of Famer Felix Cavaliere led Steve Mackey to Nashville for a Reunited Rascals tour in the summer of 1988. Along the way, he learned the ins and outs of being a hired gun in a town where everyone is looking for a gig. In the 90s, they included albums and appearances with guitar hero Lee Roy Parnell. I had Lee Roy on the show a while back. I have no idea what he said. Significant because Leroy was one of the few artists, I didn't know this, that insisted on using his band to also record. And for people listening that don't know the way the Nashville scene works, by and large, today it's not so much, but back in the 90s, for sure, you'd have a touring band and a recording band, and they were almost never the same. So Leroy used both. That was probably a great gig.
Yes, it was a great gig and a good opportunity. And that still happens a little bit, but the business has changed so much. It's every man for himself now.
Yeah.
And I think in a lot of cases, especially in the 60s, when they were just churning out songs, I think that's a matter of economics more than it is playing ability.
Yeah.
It's a different set of skills, that you use on sessions from doing a live gig. But there are monstrous, a lot of times that gets misconstrued as, oh, the good players are session guys and the other guys just are on the road. And that's not the case. I think a lot of times when there's money on the line and budgets and labels are crunching numbers, they want to kick them in and kick them out. That's part of the advantage of the Nashville system, and also the disadvantage to the Nashville factory thing.
Yeah, because you guys do like 5 songs. What is the traditional output?
Well, you can do, you can go to a demo session and do 5 songs.
Yeah.
I've done more. Sometimes it's literally just kicking them out. They're not going to be records. They're just being recorded so they can be pitched.
Yeah.
They're not doing that on master sessions, a lot of times, unless it's a custom session and you're just trying to help somebody out that doesn't have the money. Yeah,
but I think you're right. It's economics. So everything is a systematized, regimented, in and out, boom, and you got people out. It's almost like a music factory to some extent.
Sure. Yeah. But it doesn't necessarily reflect on somebody's playing ability. It's just this guy trusts this group of people to get them what they need in and out.
I'll never forget, a long time ago, I had Jerry McPherson as a guest, and who's been in this, top session guy for
Jerry Mack's for years,
forever. And he did a tour. I think it might have been with Vince Gill, and he goes, I thought I was a good player, but then he didn't say good. He goes, I thought I was okay, but I had to duplicate Dan Huff's lines. He goes, I had a lot of practicing to do. All right. So Steve also made and developed relationships from songwriters and artists from those early sessions that continue to this day. There are darts all over the musical map. So we're going to go through all of this. A failed attempt with punk pioneer Mike Ness from Social Distortion, replacing the legendary Willie Weeks in Wynonna Judd's band after Willie left Wynonna's gig, albums and tours with Trisha Yearwood and Dolly Parton, a 2013 invitation to be in the house band for Bonnaroo's celebrated Super Jam band with Zigaboo Modaliste on the drums. Is that how do you pronounce his last name? Modaliste?
Yes.
every last name I don't screw up is like such a victory. Yeah, I have no idea how good I feel. Ongoing recording and touring relationships with the Wallflowers and another Rock and Roll Hall of Fame member, John Oates. In December 2018, a Hail Mary call to cover New Year's Eve with Peter Frampton and step in for the rest of his 2019 farewell tour, which kept going into 2020 until COVID.
Well, it was planning on, we had two separate 2-week runs. One in Europe, it was like a last run in Europe, and then one supposed to be in South America in September, which, may or may not get made up. But yeah, he's done. It's a for real farewell tour.
It's not like Kiss.
You're right.
It's like farewell tour 1, farewell tour 2, This year, Steve's also working with Garth Brooks and one of the country's brightest new stars, Luke Combs. All of this and a quarantine beard. Did you not have that beard before quarantine?
No.
Really?
Yeah, no. This is a challenge for my family that I have proudly won.
Right on, man. That's very cool. What was that? Was there a prize or?
No, there will be. I'm sure somebody.
Someone's going to pay for that damn beard. Steve currently lives outside of Nashville, locked down with his wife, 2 teenagers, and a codependent lab mix named Teddy. How did you even write all this? Did you have a drink before you wrote this? This is hilarious. I think I toned it down. Not toned it down, but it was like too funny. I had to focus on music. Man, how did you first get started in the music business? I know you, and then afterwards you could talk about how you connected with Felix, but how did you, your music career start?
Well, literally my professional career started with Felix.
Wow.
I wasn't in bands when I was a kid. I wasn't around those kind of musicians. I had a neighbor that was a huge influence who played and had been in bands in the 60s, and he would come over to the house and taught me my first songs on guitar and gave me records, gave me, Otis Redding records and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't really, the first gigs that I did were after I went to school at Berklee in Boston.
Okay.
And I had played a few club gigs and played some wedding gigs. I had eventually, after being there for a couple of years, I had this really cool gig that was it was a dinner cruise that went out in Boston Harbor in season 7 nights a week. Sometimes.
Wow. That's a pretty cool gig.
It was awesome, man. And the band, it was led by this guy named Alex Alessandroni. Alex was the keyboard player. The drummer is still probably my closest friend from those days. His name is Jay Belrose. And
yeah, man, he's on everything.
Yeah, Belrose. Okay, so
I don't know him, but I know I've heard his name 150 times.
Yeah, when we were kids, we had this gig, and we had teachers trying to get this gig, and the gig in theory was supposed to be this kind of Broadway, like your waiters and waitresses serve you, and then they come and do medleys. But this guy Alex, who was the band leader, was so alpha that all he wanted to play was funk and R&B and jazz, and he was really too intimidating for anybody to ask him to play anything. So that's all we did. It was like boot camp, man. It was like funk boot camp. And so I did those gigs in Boston. Right as I was graduating, Felix spoke in one of my classes. Nashville really wasn't that much of an option. People weren't really talking about it in the late 80s as much. It was just starting to be somewhere that you would consider. And I spoke to Felix after this class, and I said, I'm considering Nashville. I don't know much about it. He had mentioned during his lecture that he was moving there from Connecticut. He was still in Connecticut at the time. And so I just said, hey, if I wind up there, can I call you when I get there?
Wow. Man, that was a pretty bold move. That is very awesome, man. What made you do that?
Well, it was school was ending and I hadn't gotten a gig. A lot of my friends and a lot of people that go there don't finish because they get a gig and then they're gone. And that hadn't happened for me at that point. And I thought, man, I'm closing in. School's going to end in 2 months. What am I going to do? I was kind of planning on going to New York because I had been working in New York a couple weekends a month at that point. And so I heard Nashville, and I thought, okay, well, I've been considering that. You know, other guys had mentioned it to me because they knew that a lot of people don't consider West Virginia Southern, but it's very rural. It's still Southern to a lot of people. And
dude, who doesn't consider West Virginia?
People who live south of West Virginia.
I was going to say, if you live in Texas, maybe, but I mean, that's the South, man.
Yeah. So, you know, I had friends who said, hey, man, you know, stuff going on down there. You should look at it. And so I said that to Felix, and he was very cool. He split, and then a couple weeks later, I found out that he was coming back to audition people for this Rascals tour. At that point, the Rascals had broken up in '72. The story was that they went into sign to re-up with Atlantic or whatever label they were on, and one of the guys flipped out and didn't want to sign, and the band broke up. Okay, so by '88, they had decided, Felix and Dino Danelli and Gene Cornish, the drummer and the guitar player, had decided that they were going to get back together and do this tour. And they never really had a bass player because Felix played pedals, B3.
Oh, so they didn't have they were like the Doors.
Right, and on the records.
I never knew that.
On the records, there were, like, Chuck Rainey played on Groovin'.
Oh, cool.
And so Rainey was on a lot of their stuff. Pops Popwell was in a later version of the Rascals.
That's wild.
But when they were gigging live, they didn't have a bass player.
Wow, interesting.
And they were Felix had been doing solo gigs, and some of his management was in Nashville. And there were other musicians that they added, and they had been using for Felix's solo gigs that were in Nashville. And this is a great story. We got plenty of time for this.
Dude, right? Yeah, man. We need cigars and alcohol.
We do.
It's only like 12:40.
So check this out. I meet Felix, comes back to Boston, I audition, get the gig. I'm good to go. I've got a place to go.
So you're feeling great at that. You got to be feeling like on cloud nine.
Yeah, man, it was awesome. And it's literally my first experience. All the other beating it up in a van with a U-Haul, all that stuff came after this gig. I didn't know. So I get to Nashville, go to the management company. The management company, the first thing, and I learned a lot of lessons from this. The first thing they did was go, okay, well, here's some agreements for the tour. We're glad you're here. Welcome to town. Sign right here. And the number was like $150 less a week than they had told me was going to happen. And if I had it to do over again, I just would have called their bluff, but I didn't. Because
your first gig, you didn't know, you figured, well.
Yeah, man, I'm 21. This is really the first kind of professional situation I was ever in.
And that's disgusting, I got to tell you. I mean,
it happens to everybody.
I know. It's as a business guy, though, man, that really puts me off because, like, you win. What's $150 to the label? I mean, come on, man. You're talking about $150 a week? That's,
right.
$7,500, something like that, $6,500 a year, maybe.
So
75.
So I signed on the line, and the guy said, and the manager said, hey, Felix has one more solo gig before they start rehearsals for this Rascals tour. Why don't you meet the bus and go just ride along to Virginia Beach and check this gig out? And you can get a feel for it, get a feel for some of the same people are going to be there. So I went to go do this. I met the bus. I walked on the bus, and the first guy that I see sitting on the couch is Bob Babbitt. The Bob Babbitt, bass monster, bass god. I mean, and I flipped out. And Babbitt had been doing Felix's solo gigs. He had just moved to Nashville maybe a year or two before that.
Why didn't he have him on with the Rascals?
Okay, this is getting into it. Babbitt, Nashville's a very weird place sometimes. It doesn't matter. There's not a whole lot of consideration for who you are, what you've done. It's a crapshoot whether you kind of fit in sometimes, or at least it was then. Babbitt had come to town, and a lot of people, because of the history here at that time especially, was country music.
Yeah.
I mean, he knew people. There were some people there were people here that knew who he was and gave him the amount of respect. But man, he wasn't getting work at that time like he should have been. He should have just been dominating everywhere. And he was a little cranky about it. And so I think part of their solution, part of Felix's solution was, okay, we're going out and doing this. I don't want to have to worry about what I'm gonna have to deal with him. Why not get this kid who's happy to be anywhere? We can get him for less money, for whatever reason. You know what I mean? So I obviously didn't know any of that.
Dude, he's coming on here in like a month. Should I just say, hey, look, before we get started, man, you owe Steve Mackey like $8,500. I'm not moving forward until you do a Venmo.
and I have to say that Babbitt was always a sweetheart to me. Rest in peace, Babbitt. I love you. He was always a sweetheart, and I would see him later. I would see him around town, and literally would be waiting to help him carry his gear out from local gigs around town. So I get on the bus. I'm in Bob Babbitt's ear like this the entire way to Virginia Beach. Oh my God, Steve Jordan, you play with Charlie Drayton.
Great.
So we get to this gig in Virginia Beach, and I'm at the front house, and I'm watching them play the gig, and it occurs to me, holy shit, I'm at Bob Babbitt's last gig. I'm the guy that's coming in, and here's Babbitt, and he knows, of course, he knew immediately, and never said a word to me about it. And then I kind of got back in the bus and got in the bunk and hid all the way home because I didn't know how to handle it.
Yeah, that's really awkward. Not. I mean, it's just awkward. Not like nobody did anything wrong or anything. It's just
no. But it's lessons learned, and that kind of thing happens in the music business all the time. And that's one of 2 or 3 different situations that people will run into, like when you're competing with friends of yours for the same gig, and you learn pretty quickly, just be cool, don't stick anybody in the back. If your phone rings, your phone rings. If his phone rings, his or her phone rings, then that's just how it is. And that's just how it happens in the music business. And so that happens a couple times, and you learn how to deal with it and not take that kind of stuff personally. But that was my first professional experience.
Baptism by fire, man.
Yes, baptism by fire. And so after that, we do that tour. There were all kinds of really cool things that happened. Of course, there were people that came out of the woodwork to see this gig. Chuck.
You mean in the audience and in behind stage after the show?
Yeah. We're in Dallas, and somebody comes and gets me and says, Mackey, come to the dressing room. Felix wants you in the dressing room. And I walk in Felix's dressing room, and there's Chuck Rainey.
Oh my God.
And Felix just kind of goes, Chuck, meet our bass player. This is Steve. And I was just on Chuck Rainey, hung all night long.
That's so cool. He seems like a pretty nice guy, man.
He's a great guy. And I owe Felix so much for that. There were so many firsts for me. I hadn't traveled, west of Memphis at that point. I mean, everything that we did was a first for me. Handling myself on a gig and, traveling around, having sushi.
The simple things in life. Yeah. Oh, I'm going to get your PayPal address, and I'm going to get that $8,500 out of Felix.
Good. It was interest. He's got to pay the vig.
Yeah, man. He's got to pay the vig like everybody else. What a great story, man. So that was a really wonderful gig. That you probably got so much more seasoning. How long did that gig last?
That lasted, it started in April or May. It lasted until September. And we did a few solo gigs in Nashville. So September is really when I settled in Nashville. We were gone kind of all summer. After that, in that fall, we probably did 3 or 4 more solo gigs with Felix. Before that, he went on to other projects. And then I had to begin my career in Nashville not really knowing anybody. And that's kind of where I started from the ground up. It was really weird because I came to town on a bus gig, on a tour with a salary and, per diem and all that kind of stuff. And 8 months later, it was kind of a different story.
So you probably did what, 75 gigs or so with him?
I bet 50 to 70 gigs.
So that was like most new people, especially out of school, they don't get 75 gigs in 5 years sometimes, man.
No.
Yeah, that was a hell of a good experience for you, man. That's wonderful.
I think part of it, I mean, obviously I could play the gig and do okay on the gig, and everybody was happy with what I was doing. But I think part of it was just me being naive and just diving in. One lesson that I learned going to Boston from West Virginia was just to dive in. Whether you're scared, whether you're nervous about what's going to happen, what the outcome is going to be, it's always, more than not, it's worked out when I've just jumped into something like that.
Let me ask you this. I give you so much credit for having the balls to go up to Felix Cavaliere and say, hey, can I give you a call when I come to Nashville? And you might not have even been aware of it, but that really took a lot of courage. What is that? Are you like that in general, or like what?
No, but I don't think that's my nature. But my nature is not to. I'm not really a networking guy on purpose like that.
Yeah.
But I won't. I don't hesitate to walk up and engage with somebody if I'm into what they're doing, or if they've said something or made some kind of impression on me. I don't hesitate to do that ever. I have done that with songwriters for years, and with guys who had gigs maybe locally in Nashville that I knew I wasn't going to be around for, maybe because I didn't run in those circles. And I've heard songwriters that really moved me and immediately ran up. That is in my nature, to immediately run up and go, wow, this is incredible. This really moved me, and I would love to play some music with you.
Okay, so it wasn't as much as, hey, man, I'd like a gig. It was more like, I love what you're doing. Yes. And I would love to somehow get involved with this from a musical / musical spiritual standpoint. Yeah, I mean, I'm not the world's authority, but I've had 700 and close to 50 interviews. That is not common. And I wish it was more common, because most guys come on the show and I have to like beat them over the head to promote their own record. I'm like, hey, is there anything I could promote? Yeah. Well, don't you have a new album out? Yeah. Well, let's talk about it. Well, yeah, you don't. I'm like, man, it ain't going to sell itself. What, you're here. And I wish, I don't know why, but it's always, so that's why I give you so much credit. That's great. You made a life for yourself with that. That one question changed your life.
Yeah, absolutely. It did. And it set me on a path really early. I mean, I was 20 years old, 21.
Yeah.
So I wish a lot of times, because I'm like that. I'm not a big promoter. I don't think that I've thought as much as I needed to sometimes about the trajectory of my career, or calculated moves, point A to point B to this. It's always, more than not, it's been about, oh, I feel passionate about that. I want in on that.
Yeah. Most people are like that. No, there's very few people that are that are like strategic about moves.
Right.
Very few. I mean, less than 1% that I've spoken to. But yeah, most people are very organic and not willful. Like if you're energetic, if you're doing the right thing, it seems to kind of take care of itself, sort of.
Absolutely. That's what I found.
That's a good. Do you ever tell your kids when they're bitching about, do you know what I had to do to get my first job? I could just see, I would be telling that to my kids, and the eye, the glaze over their head. They'd be like, great, Dad. That's really good. Did you, walk to school with Abraham Lincoln too? Whatever. Okay. So you come back to town, couple of bucks in your pocket, and all fired up, nothing to do. What happens next?
What happens next is I run out of the money that I've saved. And don't have the foresight to go get a day gig, which is what I tell everybody to do if they need to do that. I was living with a friend of mine who was a bass player. He got a call for an R&B gig for like a beach music band, basically kind of 60s and 70s R&B gig.
Great music.
Yeah, it's great music, and it was really music that I loved and knew really well. I didn't know any country music. I didn't know any country songs.
What the hell are you listening to in West Virginia?
Stuff we listened to on the radio. Whatever was on the radio, like top 40 70s radio, which I still love.
I know. Best.
I heard that, and I heard bluegrass, and I was definitely I was definitely not going that way. So my roommate gets a call for this gig, and he can't do it. He threw it to me because he knew that I knew all those songs. And I wound up in this Van U-Haul beach music gig with a guy who had one or two hits in the 60s. And I kind of, I hid out there. I learned a lot on that gig as well, but I also kind of was just treading water, and I was making just enough money to get by. And it was taking me out of town. And after about a year and a half, I thought, well, I just can't do this anymore. And I can remember laying down in between the seats of this van and just staring up, and it was dark outside, and we're driving to the next gig. And I just sat up in between the driver and the passenger, and I just said, this is my 2 weeks notice. I don't have any idea what I'm going to, but I know that I'm not going to get anywhere unless I make myself do it. That was about a year and a half later. So, depending on how you look at it, I wasted a year and a half there.
No, man, because you had to burn out. You can't burn out in 3 weeks.
Sure.
You had again, I give you a ton of credit. You came to the conclusion that, wait a minute, I'm doing the same thing. At least that was with Felix Cavaliere.
Yeah. I'm
in a van here traveling, and my back is killing me, and I'm going to have the same net result.
Yeah. And that's why I say a lot of times, because I was so new to the whole thing, because I didn't grow up gigging and thinking about, this is what I'm going to do. I knew I was going to be a musician, but I was really still naive in a lot of respects. And so the only thing I knew was to start at the bottom. I didn't think about networking, I can call this guy and I have this mutual friend. And I just thought, how do you do this in Nashville? And at that time, Nashville was still mainly a country music kind of town.
Sure.
And I knew that the bulk of the work was in that industry, that part of the industry. And so I just, I thought, where do I start? Well, everybody starts by going and sitting in at these clubs. And so there were 2 or 3 clubs around town that you could just go and sign up and sit in on a jam night, And I did that, and eventually started meeting guys that were my own age and people who were gigging, and
and then someone would say, "Hey, man, I need a bass player for this for a session," or so you started. Okay, yeah. How long did it take till you were now? Did you make a conscious decision at that point? I want to do sessions.
I didn't. At that point, I was just gigging to pay bills. It was just however I was going to get. Yeah. I knew that the session thing was going to be a long-term thing. I knew I had a friend from Berklee who was kind of a Cinderella story and moved here and really changed the game on piano. And I had been in contact with him. And he let me know, too, Matt Rawlings, if you know Matt Rawlings.
No, I don't.
Oh, man. He literally changed how everybody played piano on records when he moved here. He played on a Lyle Lovett record. I knew him in Berklee. And when Tony Brown and some other people heard how he played on that record, everybody just went, I want this guy. He let me know really early on that's not how it happens for everybody. And so I didn't look at sessions as something that I was going to make happen quickly. At that point, I was just looking for gigs and to pay my bills and make a living solely at playing music. And so Glenn Worf, who was a guy that I met very early on, told me, say yes to everything.
Yeah.
You know, and that was after he told me, welcome to town. There's always room for another great player. Let me buy you a beer. On the first day I met him. And so
just a class human being.
Yeah, he's the best. And in the course of our conversation, he just said, man, say yes to everything because it's going to come back around. And when it comes back around, you'll know whether you want to do it again or not, or whether it's going to be a good experience for you or whether you want to pursue wherever that is going to take you. And that's literally what I did. I said yes to gigs. I said yes to small country gigs that would take me to Maine or wherever we were going. I said yes to coffee house, jazz kind of gigs, because that was similar to experiences that I'd had playing socials in the Northeast. Mm. And you just put your head down and move into it. And it probably, that was around 90, 91. I wound up having a friend that went on Lee Roy Parnell's gig, and eventually their bass player left, and he brought me in on that gig,
which was awesome. And Lee Roy was big time and back then, man.
Yeah, Lee Roy at that point, that was 92. That was he was the inside favorite, the industry favorite. The country music scene on the radio was still a very diverse scene, and you could have Lee Roy, you could have Alan Jackson, who's very traditional, and Lee Roy, who was like the Austin guitar slinger kind of guy, as influenced by blues and Duane Allman as he was by Merle Haggard, and then on the other side of the spectrum, maybe you got Steve Earle or Nancy Griffith or whoever. Yeah. And so that was all said and done. I mean, that was 90, 91, 92.
How long did you get how long was the Lee Roy gig for?
I was on the Lee Roy gig for probably 7 years.
Wow, that is a very long, that's like 100 years.
Yes, 6, 7 years. And it was another.
Oh my God.
And I wound up, that's another situation where that was a very valuable gig. And that's kind of where we all made our bones in that band in Nashville, because we played on Lee Roy's records and we were a badass band and we were known for being a badass band. He didn't sell a lot of records, but when we played, musicians came out of the woodwork.
Yeah, that's a musician's gig. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and so after being on that gig for that long, I had kind of zoomed out enough to look back and think, wow, I've been in Nashville for this many years. I don't really know that I'm closer to what I want, which is to be established more as a player for me and not being in somebody's band. And so I quit that gig.
I really give you, you're an awesome guy. I like people that make ballsy moves.
I'll take that credit. At the same time, it takes me, I'm a conservative kind of guy sometimes in those respects. And it takes me a long time to get there.
Yeah, but you know what, man, I I get it, but any relationship, I mean, how long does it take you once you have a tooth that's bothering you to get to the dentist?
Sure.
Maybe 6 months, when the pain of not doing something is greater than the pain of doing it. That's when we're all like that. That's when you execute, right? When do you leave a guy's unhappy in his marriage? 5 years later, 10 years later, he's getting divorced.
Right. Good example.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to leave relationships, whether it's professional or personal, man.
Yeah.
You got to be really sick and tired of the whole thing.
I just told a young friend of mine, a guy that I've kind of corresponded with, just moved here, a young bass player, just moved here from New York. New move to Nashville. So we met actually last week. We sat outside, had some tacos, and had a beer. You know, and I like to do that with young guys and young musicians that come to town. People did that for me, and I feel like that's a really important thing to do.
You got to watch out, man. You can't say I like to do that with young guys. We're going to have someone. Hey, man, you had this guest. We're filing charges. What?
That's our sound.
I know. I saw you. I watched you catch yourself.
Yeah. So, okay. So one of his concerns when I asked him, "How do you feel about being here?" You know, there's not much going on, and you've been he came at the beginning of this thing, and he said, "Well, I feel great about being here. I'm a little hesitant about the fact that I'm 30 years old."
That's funny.
I know. He's a baby. Yeah, and I said to him, listen, and specifically I was talking about this Lee Roy gig.
Yeah.
I said, listen, I quit this gig when I was about 30, and in many respects, I didn't really start my thing in Nashville as it's related to what I'm doing now. I didn't start that until I was 30.
Yeah.
So don't worry about that. You can change any situation that you're in at any time.
Anytime.
It doesn't matter how old you are. Yeah. It just doesn't matter.
And you know what? And this is not a political comment. That is the wonderful thing about this country. You really can anytime do. And there's there's no governor for any of that shit for the most part. Right. You know, all you need is a little bit of moxie and a little confidence, whether it's fake or real. But that was great.
Yeah, and especially in the music business. I mean, there was a point. I think there was a point when I was in my late 30s, early 40s that I thought, okay, I'm not going to be in a young rock band, you know, that's out there doing it right now. That's not going to happen. That's cool. Doesn't mean I can't play on a record.
Yeah.
You know,
but as you know, every single musician comes to that realization at a certain point.
Yes.
Every guy and gal I've talked to said, I realized this verbatim. I realized at a certain point I wasn't going to be on stage a rock star.
Right.
Everybody. It's funny but I think a lot of that is because you don't know there's other stuff when you're 17 or 18 or 20. You don't know that, wait a minute, I can make a living doing sessions and raise a family, or, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I also think a lot of times we don't realize it because we love what we do. And so in my mind, I'm still 20 years old, man. Sure. I'm still 30 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. So am I. My wife tells me every day, dude, look.
Moisturize.
I used to, you know, it's funny, man. I used to tell I always sort of had a baby face until like 5 or 6 years ago, right? And my son always said, Dad, you always look so young. I used to tell him, I said, Nick, you know why? I saw this TV show 25 years ago, and they said, when you get out of the shower, moisturize.
That's right, man.
And then at a certain point, those wrinkles don't give a shit. They're like, dude, you can moisturize us for an hour. Right, we don't care. We're not moving.
Yeah, that's when those wrinkles just become character.
Yeah, man, right. That's exactly.
You know.
So you left Lee Roy's, again, really commend you for that. Who's his second guitar player for most of that run?
His second guitar player is a guy named James Pennebaker. Was a guy named James.
I know who James. But didn't you know
Pennebaker?
Yeah, I had him on here a long, long time ago. Yeah, but Was Jack Pearson playing though with him then?
Jack wasn't in. That goes way back. Jack Pearson wasn't in this band. They played a lot together. That goes back far enough that I think the story is that Lee Roy, maybe when he was still living in Austin, wound up playing with Jack, getting Jack to play in his band back then.
Because Jack was a kid.
Yes, and he had to ask permission.
Yeah.
Leroy had to ask his mom for permission or something like that.
Right. Yeah. That was it. But I didn't know if they played all at later than that. I knew that early period. I didn't know if he was in there. Okay, so you quit. Presumably, you're more comfortable because you had some experience, probably had a couple of bucks in your pocket now this time. You knew some people in town. What'd you do next? Well,
I still had – I wound up doing a gig with that summer, doing some gigs with Deana Carter. I don't know if you know her or not.
Deena?
Deana, yes.
Oh, no,
Deana. And her dad was Fred Carter Jr., who was one of the 18 guitar players.
Okay.
So I always had some live gigs to kind of supplement. But it was at that point that I just started kind of going out as my own freelance, like hired gun kind of thing. And I always admired those guys. Obviously, if you want to do sessions, everybody wants to be the guy that's your phone is ringing so much you don't do anything else. I've never really been that guy. I've always had a little bit of a gig here, a little bit of a gig here. But at that point is when I started doing sessions a little more legitimate, kind of on the card demo, Music Row, quote unquote sessions. And I always had a gig here, do some gigs with Deana Carter, or like the following year I did some gigs with Steve Wariner.
Oh yeah, I had Steve on here too.
Who's awesome. And
Great player.
These were all situations where they might only do 20 gigs a year or 30 gigs a year, and they were. Yeah,
but this is a legit gig. You're playing with Steve Wariner. He's a tremendous guitar player, man.
Yeah,
that's a very legit gig. So you're on that gig, you're automatically going to be like getting street creds for the next gig.
Yes, absolutely. And that was one of the things that Leroy's gig did for all of us.
Great.
We all came out of that thing with reputations as players.
That's wonderful, man.
And a lot of times I have wound up on gigs where that's really been the focus of the band, or that's been one of the reasons why I got hired. We want these guns in our band, kind of.
That's great.
Kind of deal. Yeah, I'm really fortunate that way. And then that came. This is one of the things about being in town for so long. Eventually that kind of situation came to a head, and we can move into that if you want to.
Yeah, man, go ahead. Just keep doing what you're doing. You're just like,
okay,
you're steering the rudder here. I'm happy.
Okay. So let's get to Mike Ness.
Yeah. Thank you. That was next.
we're at,
so look, Mike Ness is Social Distortion for anybody. Was he social?
Mike is like California punk pioneer. Fucking body tattoos, he's the real thing.
The pompadour
and the dark Ray-Bans, and he's the real deal. So,
you're the second person in a week, maybe less, that told me about Mike. So, this is my
okay.
Okay. Let me see who else. I can't remember who told. It was less than a week ago. So my prediction is I'll be having Mike on this. This is how this happens.
Yeah.
I hear a name. Next thing I know, boom. It's really crazy. I gotta say,
to be in that situation which was so completely different for me than any Nashville experience I'd had. He was very cool and very accommodating. So here's the story. This would probably be around 99. And
so very just a short while after the Lee Roy gig.
Yeah, I left Lee Roy 96, 97.
Okay.
By 99, I'd kind of hit another wall. I felt like I'd hit another wall. I didn't feel like I was progressing like I needed to be, whatever that meant in my own mind.
Pause right there. I want to ask you a question about that, because I have battled with that for 56 years. How do you define that for you? Or how did you used to, and how did you define it today? Like, are you better? Are you more merciful with yourself today?
Oh, yeah, man.
Is my question. Okay.
Listen, I beat myself up. I beat myself up on a regular basis. The difference is today I recover way more quickly.
Okay, so you still have the same feelings, but you're like the forgiveness, the like, you're like you can talk yourself off the ledge.
Yes, now it doesn't last. now it doesn't last more than the car ride home.
Okay. Because I always think, does everybody do this to themselves?
No, man.
Okay.
Everybody does it. Everybody does it. I have these conversations, and I don't know that it's a bad quality to walk around because sometimes you need to walk around with your chest puffed out, like I'm the baddest. You need that. You need to be able to tell yourself sometimes, or I can do this. I know my abilities. I know that I can do this. And then to flip it right around and go, oh my God, I suck. There's so much more I need. There's so much more out there that I don't know. I don't know that that's a totally bad quality. You just need to learn how to do that seesaw thing with yourself.
I'm always working on that.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know that.
No matter how many self-help books I read, how many therapist chairs I sit in, it's just like I'm always back to that. Why? The
imposter syndrome, man.
Yeah, right. Thank you for sharing that, because I was like, God, I haven't heard many people say that. So when someone said it, I got it.
Yeah, well, and that's how I felt at that time. And I got a phone call. I can't even remember right now how it came down, but I got a phone call, and they said, we would like for you to come to LA and audition for Mike Ness for some solo record that he had. And you need to be prepared. If you get the gig, you need to be prepared to immediately leave for 6 weeks on tour. It was all going to go down that quick. It was at a real low point in my life, just personally. Professionally, I wasn't working. I wasn't moving forward like I wanted to be at the time. My home life at the time was not great. And so I thought, okay, maybe at least this is an opportunity to kick up some dust and have some new energy. I wasn't opposed to moving somewhere else at that time. And I didn't know what any kind of scene was like in LA or anywhere else other than Nashville, really. And the money was horrible. Way less than I had already expected.
As if everything else wasn't bad enough. The new opportunity is going to cost me money.
Yes.
Especially you move to LA, you'll have to get another gig to support your first gig.
Right. But it was a chance for some new blood, some new life. Yeah. Maybe this will hit a spark, and something else will open up. Another door will open up. So I did that. So I went to LA. I packed up. Part of the thing was that I was going to play upright. It was like a punkabilly kind of record. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So I didn't have a case. Would you put it on your lap? I put it in a giant cardboard box with eggshells and had it shipped to LA before I got there. Oh my God, that's courage, man. Yeah, man. So it's jumping off into the deep end, Yeah. Again, I'm just diving and not seeing the bottom. And I got out there, and the short story is I auditioned for Mike Ness. I'm sure, man. I was in like a part of Orange County that I had never seen before, like the other side of Orange County. Everybody is full on, for real, tough ass punk musicians. Like they're living the life.
Yeah.
And I'm in, you know, some black Timberlands trying to look as tough as I can look, and nobody's buying it. You know, nobody's buying it. So I don't get the gig. They were all very cool. I don't get the gig. The next day, the following day after I auditioned,
they told you that day you did not get the gig?
No, they did not. They said, we'll call you.
We'll call you.
They sent me back to my Pulp Fiction motel at 11 o'clock in the morning.
That was great.
The owner of this motel is banging on the door because nobody has paid for a second day.
Oh my God.
And I'm inside this hotel. Going, I'm not leaving. I don't care. You can call the cops. You can do whatever you want to do. I'm not leaving. I have nowhere to go. And then that lasted about 45 minutes to an hour. And I get the phone call. Sorry, you were great. Mike's decided to go with this other guy who already had friends in the band.
Right.
And was kind of in that scene anyway. It was kind of a natural call. And you have an hour and a half to get to LAX. And so, man, I'm in the floor with the little hotel trash can, like scooping up eggshells and putting them back in the box. And I had brought rolls of gaff tape, and I'm gaffing up the.
Oh my God!
It's fucking unbelievable, man. It was miserable, and so I go home with my tail between my legs. Like, not only was I at the bottom and went and tried to do this thing, I'm home 3 days later with nothing.
That's so stressful, man.
It's incredibly stressful.
Yeah.
And so a week after that, I get a phone call from a songwriter friend of mine named Gary Nicholson, who at one time, man, people would cut a song just because his name was on the paper.
I know that guy. Haven't met him, but I know of him for sure.
Yeah, he's a pretty revered songwriter.
Yeah.
He's pretty A-team Nashville songwriter. He got deep roots around here and deep Texas roots. So Gary called me to play one of his solo gigs. I had known him through Lee Roy. And I, of course, said, yes, I'm in. Whatever you got, I'm in. And he said, okay, hey, man, just to let you know, I'm in the studio right now. I'm producing the new Judds record. This is years after the Judds have broken up. And this was probably November of 99, and a week after I had come home. And he said, I'm in the studio producing the new Judds record, and Willie Weeks has just quit. And, immediately I'm just like, okay, just get me a phone number. Do whatever. And he said, I'm not in that position. I'm just trying to let you know what's going on. I can't really go to Willie and say anything. I'm just putting that in your lap.
That was really cool of him to do that. Did you know him before that?
I knew him through Lee Roy's gig. He and Lee Roy wrote a bunch of those songs.
Okay. And
so I had been in his world, for all that time I was with Lee Roy. And afterwards, I wasn't a guy that he called on for sessions on a regular basis.
But that was very cool, man.
Yes, yeah. And we were friends, I'm sure.
And very timely. Not very that timely. He knew that, but man.
Yes, very timely. And so he couldn't do any more than that, but that was enough. And so I found a phone number for Willie. If you know Willie or you know Willie's reputation, he's a very private guy. And through another friend, I found Willie's phone number just out of desperation because I didn't know, how else am I going to get to this guy? I picked up the phone and called him. I'm sitting in my kitchen and I said, Willie, he answered the phone. I said, Willie, I'm sorry to bug you. I don't mean to put you out. Told him who I was. And I said, I know that you're auditioning for Wynonna's gig. And I would just like to be heard. Now, at this point, the audition is in 4 or 5 days, and everything is set. All the people that are coming in, they've tried to keep it secret. He didn't really want a lot of people. Wynonna didn't want a lot of people knowing he was leaving. They were just going to handle it, get their new guy, and continue on. And the first thing Willie Weeks said to me is, "Man, how did you get my phone number? Listen, I got it. Man, somebody's buzzing in on me. Just hang on a second." And he was not happy that I called him. And so I'm sitting in my little kitchen, on hold.
You're on hold with Willie Weeks.
Like 6 minutes. And I'm talking to my wife, who's standing on the other side of the kitchen, like, I'm not hanging up this phone. Eventually, he gets back on and he said, "Oh, man, are you still here? All right, look, just come in Tuesday, 4:30. We'll get you in. All right, later." And what I found out later was people were starting to find out he was leaving, and everybody was calling him.
Oh, so you were one of 25 calls he got
yes,
that day.
And he was not happy about it.
Okay.
For whatever reason, probably because I found this out from Gary, who was producing that record.
Oh, and you let him know that.
I did let him know that.
Okay, so that's why you were like, he was copacetic with you. He was like, all right, man, if Gary told you,
he still was not happy. He may have thought that, or he may have thought, I can't turn him down. At least it came from Gary.
Yeah, right.
So
but that was your in. Great.
That was my in.
Great.
And so I got.
You know what's funny, man? I hear these stories again and again, and they're all so wonderful.
I love it. They all happened a little bit differently too.
Yeah, but it's so like it like renews my faith in humanity and in like the human spirit, and in like, man, don't give up.
No.
Keep going. Do what you love, but that is the primary. Nobody does this for any other reason.
Right.
Yeah, you need to get paid. You need to make money, but you didn't go into this. People don't become a musician to become a millionaire.
Right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
And that purity is just awesome. I love it. Yeah, it's great. And so
that's okay. If I've learned one thing in being here for 32 years now, it's don't quit.
Yeah.
One thing, if you want it, don't quit. Because if it comes around, even if something comes around and you miss it the first time, something's going to come around again. The exact same thing may come around again.
Yes.
And it's frustrating because that's another thing that I don't know. I don't know that have always been ready for opportunities that have come along, and misfired or fucked up an audition or whatever, or misread a situation for whatever reason. But I haven't quit, and some of those same opportunities have come around again. So that's why I say for young musicians, be ready. It's cool to be on a gig and happy and isn't this awesome? But have a little bit of an overview. You don't need to be calculated, and it doesn't mean that you're not a sincere kind of person.
No, but be ready for opportunity when it calls.
Yes, be ready.
And, my older son sent me something that's kind of relevant to this conversation. Just let me read it. Take a second. I was talking with my two sons. We always text because my younger son listens to bad music, and he's trying to he's trying to
change what he's listening to.
Yeah, so he always says, "Hey guys," about this, because my older son listens to kind of like more stuff that I would listen to, and he said something about see, that's the kind of conversation you're going to be having in 10 years. It'll be like totally different, man. It's so much better now, man. It's like it's not like when your kids are little, it's like everything they do, just like you just watch the energy drip out of you.
That's right.
And then when they're older, it's like, oh, this is really cool. But what he said was about an Eskimo. Okay. He said, he goes, you got to get your Eskimo. And I said, what did you mean by that? I don't know the context, but he said, he heard a story. There was like an Arctic expedition and they were lost and they were walking around hungry for days. He said they were at the edge of death. He said all of a sudden an Eskimo shows up and he took them to a town that was only 3 miles away. And even though it was so close, they never would have found it on their own. They just needed that Eskimo to find it. So he said, whenever I feel like I'm lost in the Arctic, Dad, I know at some point there'll be an Eskimo.
Right.
But what I have to reveal about this is he's writing all this while he's driving.
You're right.
So I think he's in the Arctic more than he thinks, but that was a great story.
Yeah, it is good.
We're all waiting for our Eskimo, man.
Yeah, man, that's good advice.
Sorry. Okay, so Willie Weeks gig, audition with the Judds.
Yeah.
What happens?
Yeah. I got called back. I created a problem. You know, you got to create a problem. If there's probably somebody that was going to be already, they had already been eyeing to be on that gig. I wound up coming in at the last minute and created a problem. And now it goes down to 2 people, me and another guy. And I wound up getting the gig. And I've never been so happy. I needed that gig so bad. I've never been so happy in my life. And I was in Wynonna's band for probably 6 years. And Wynonna had a great reputation, obviously, for having great musicians in her band. So I was in another band that was kind of known for having players. You know, Russ Kunkel, Russ Kunkel was in there.
I didn't know that.
They had all kinds of guys. The guy, what's his name that played in the Range? Bruce Hornsby in the Range.
What, guitar?
Drummer.
Oh, I don't know.
I can't remember. He was there for a while. And obviously Willie was the band leader. So, but Wynonna would work like most people did. She would go to work in the summer, maybe work a little bit into the fall, and then shut everything down. And you didn't know whether she was going to go kick back up or what.
Well, how do you plan your schedule in that case?
You don't. You just jump when they say jump.
So if you had a gig, you had to just find a sub or whatever.
What you talking about? If I had a Wynonna gig?
Yeah, well, like when she's down, when she's out, when she's off, how do you know? Like, I mean, you got to work.
Yes, yeah. You save your money.
Yeah.
You save your money, and eventually that happened a couple. I got tired of being panicked in November or December. And look, what's going to happen? When's she going to start back again? Well, we know she is. We don't know when. And so that's when I put a lot more effort into going out and getting sessions and doing one-offs. And I feel like my security as a musician in a business where there really isn't any security is to throw my net as wide as I possibly can.
Good.
And I don't want to be locked down with one artist because you're locked to that schedule. And if they decide they want to take a year off, they can take a year off. You can't do that. As musicians, most of the time we have to, if somebody shuts down, we need to be gigging again immediately.
Yeah.
And especially with a family, I had, my kids are teenagers now, but this was in 02, 04, So this
is when your kids were born?
Yes. Yeah. By 04, I had 2 babies.
Yeah.
And so the more people that wanted me, the more secure I felt, because if one thing shut down, I could go to this.
You got to have plan B, C, and D as a musician. You have to.
Yes. Yeah. And at that point, I started shying away from gigs that were full-time gigs and being a little more discerning about what I took. And taking gigs, looking a little further and maybe taking gigs that didn't pay as much right now, but it was a contact that was in town and I knew that work was going to grow.
Okay. And you also started getting more sessions.
Yes. At that point, I started getting a lot more sessions. I played on one of Wynonna's records, And
oh, that's great.
And the first, I would say that the sessions that I started doing that really took me from being the one guy in the room who maybe wouldn't be there every day, the odd man out, was with a songwriter named Jeffrey Steele, who had so many hit records, man. It's just all over the map. At that time, it was the same kind of situation. Like Jeff Steele, if his name was on the paper, somebody you could almost guarantee that it was going to be a hit song. And I started doing his demo sessions. And of course, all the guys he called were all the guys who were making records at the time. A little bit older than me, definitely more established. But that's like the first Jeff Steele session I walked into. Greg Morrow was the drummer. And I said to him years later, I've become really close friends with him. I love him. He's one of my favorite guys, favorite musicians. And I said to him years after that, I will never forget how cool you were to me the first day I walked into those sessions. I remember it vividly. And he just shrugged it off. He just said, well, you had something to offer. And
he's ultra mellow, man.
Man.
You've got to be like, you'd have to be a real asshole to get him upset, because he's he's a very nice guy. He seems like he's got a pretty, he's a very amiable fella, man.
He is. He's a good man. And tremendous musician.
Well, and so by that time, I mean, you've had by that time, Felix Cavaliere, Steve Wariner, Wynonna, Gary Nicholson, you've had now like that pedigree for Nashville. Right. So now you're the guy, and people know that's not, you didn't luck into that.
Yes. And it's all a word of mouth thing. And that's why I say don't quit, because it's all compound interest, man. It's all building on top of itself.
Dude, I love that. That's a great line.
And I did a session with in Wynonna's band. I made friends with a guy named Steve Cox, who I had known kind of casually through the years as acquaintances. Steve had always been Trisha Yearwood's piano player back in her heyday when she was young, when she first came out. And she had not been gigging for a while. She was going back. Wynonna was shutting down. Cox told me Trisha's going back out. The bass player's not going back out. And so I said, man, let me know. If they're listening to guys, I just want to be heard. And then he mentioned me to her. She knew me from Lee Roy's gigs, which at that point, 10 years earlier, we knew her from doing the same gigs. And she said, oh man, I know. I remember Steve Mackey from Lee Roy. Just tell him if he wants it, come on in. And
wow.
So now that's the
compound interest now, man.
Yes.
There's no audition. It's if he wants it, come on in.
Right.
That's really cool, man. So that's that's cool, because you get to see your own career, like the fruits of your sweat off your brow, fruits of labor, whatever you want to call it. But that's really cool.
It builds your confidence.
Yeah.
And it also allowed me to walk in on a gig and maybe not be as nervous about how I'm going to approach it, even though, because people want to see you want to see confidence. You need confidence. You need to really,
of course,
you need that for yourself. And for me to go, I remember Trisha from 10 years ago, even though I wasn't really good friends with her. It just made me feel good that she said that. And so I could walk in on the gig just like, yeah, all right. What you got?
Cool,
all right. Let's have your stuff. Let's go work.
That's awesome. Very cool, man.
Yeah, she's a really special person.
Who was the guitar player on that gig?
The guitar player was her longtime band leader, Johnny Garcia.
Okay, yeah, he's been around a long time.
And Morrow wound up being the drummer for that.
He's on everything.
A couple tours. Yeah. And so that's part of where I really got to know him well, was living with him on the road. You know?
And his tentacles, he's not just in like the country. He
right.
Dan Baird, Werner Herzog.
Yeah,
I mean, everybody's like, you know, Greg Morrow.
Yeah.
Bob Seger.
Right.
You know?
He's all over the place.
John Oates, what'd you do with John? How'd you get the gig, and any cool stories about working with John?
Oates came to town. I've been working with Oates probably 10 or 11 years now. He came to town. I got called to do a record with Oates. It was before he moved here. I turned down the record because I was already booked. It was a mistake. I was already booked with a producer that I knew if I bailed on him, he was infamous for never calling you back.
So how is it a mistake? What would you have done? How do you handle that?
Because in hindsight, I've done a lot more work with Oates in these 10 years than I have with this other guy who's now retired.
Oh, but there's no way to know that.
Yeah, you don't know it.
That's not possible.
No, you don't know it. But so,
because you got a guy paying your mortgage every month for a potential, you know, hot, great dinner on a Saturday or Sunday night for you and your family.
Right. But I mean, it's not a regret.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I definitely could have. I definitely could have stepped back. I could have taken a couple steps back and looked collectively at both situations and both guys, Oates and this producer.
Yeah.
And gone, oh, okay, there may be a little more here.
Yeah.
There may be a little more meat on this bone. You know?
Yeah, you have no way of knowing that.
Yeah, man. You don't know. You don't know
that's impossible to know.
So I didn't get this record, but I went down there and I met him because T-Bone, God rest his soul, T-Bone came to town without a P-bass, and T-Bone Walk was playing on the first half of the record. And so I brought down my P-bass for T-Bone, and I met T-Bone and I met Oates, and Oates, of course, says, oh, man, I'm so sorry you can't do this, and, you know, maybe we'll get to work together again sometime. But I was connected to the thing, even though I didn't do it. You know,
yeah.
I made it.
Hey, well, thank you went down there. That was probably huge. That but this people don't realize there's a big difference. I don't know if so more, and I hate to sound like an old man with younger people, but with baby boomers, when you connect physically, there's something happens there, man. It's like it's like you get to smell the coffee,
right?
And it's a lot better for moving forward than
it really is. I mean, you can burn those, you can burn an impression in on somebody. I mean, especially if you click with them, especially if you immediately have a connection with them. And Oates, I immediately had a connection with Oates after spending some time with him, because he came from this New York world that I loved, and all I wanted to hear about was Chuck Rainey playing on your first record. Oh man! Oh, we used to work with Arif Mardin, and we hired Gordon Edwards to play bass, and he could hear that in my playing. I'm sure he could hear Rainey and some of those things in my playing, and so he latched on immediately. And we've done a bunch of records. We've done a lot of gigging, and I will say that when John Oates gigs, it's not unusual for him to be the guy that calls you the night before and says, hey man, what's your frequent flyer miles? I'm going to put it in on your,
Oh, that's cool, man.
Oates is the guy when you get to the airport, he says, watch my suitcase. I'm going to go get the rent-a-car. I'll come back around in a minute.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah. He's a great guy. I love him.
That's really cool.
And that's how that happened. And we've done plenty of things. Oates is how I got in on is how I got asked to do the Bonnaroo Super Jam. I
was going to ask you about that. How did that come about? And also, who did you back? You must have backed up some great.
It was great. It was so fun. There's a bunch of YouTube on it. Billy Idol, who by far was one of the most professional people I've ever worked with. The dude walked in more prepared than anybody else, sang his song, turned around to the band and said, all right, you guys sound great. I'll see you tonight. He was gone.
That's awesome. I'm not surprised. I had his guitar, Steve Stevens, here on the show.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And they've been together for like 30 years.
Right.
And Steve was the same way. He was very nice, incredibly professional, just like, very honest and open. He wasn't like phony, but you could just tell his commitment, his work ethic, discipline is on all the time.
I really respect that. I really respect guys like that. And Oates is like that. And Oates, the Super Jam thing came about in a really funny way because, that band typically is full of celebrity kind of musicians.
Yeah.
Ziggy was playing drums. Jim James, Oates and Jim James, who has his band, My Morning Jacket. They were leading the band. And so Oates calls me and says, hey, I might need you for this house band thing. I was really excited about who was doing it. A guy named Bilal Oliver, who was really who I was more thrilled about than anybody being there. R&B singer from Philadelphia, incredible.
That's cool. Who is the house guitar player?
Carl, I can't remember Carl's last name, but he's in My Morning Jacket.
Okay.
Great player, great songwriter. Does his own records as well. And so I get an email a couple weeks before the gig from the organizer of Bonnaroo, the head guy.
Now that's in the middle of Tennessee somewhere, correct?
Yes, it's south of Nashville, maybe an hour and a half.
Okay. And
so my email says, man, just letting you know, you're out of this house band gigs. We're getting Larry Graham.
Well, if you got to get fired for somebody, man.
I was like, okay. Totally
that's
cool.
Okay. Yeah.
Totally cool. And then, I said, thank you so much for being there. And so now I'm just spinning it like, how do I get some tickets? Can you still give me a pass to get in?
Yeah.
2 days later, I get another email. Actually, I get a phone call from Oates. And he has called Larry Graham and told Larry Graham the deal. And I think basically he said, I'm Larry Graham. You guys are playing for me. I'm not in house bands. So I'm back in. 3 days later, I'm back in. And the deal that they kind of made with Larry, they said, okay, no big deal. We totally understand that. We'll feature you for 4 songs. You can kind of have the end of the night. And that's what they did. And
so did you play with him then, or did you step out?
I was supposed to step out. And I stepped out for 3 songs. The encore was I Want to Take You Higher.
Oh, man.
And this is the end of the night.
That's the R&B song, man.
One of the coolest experiences of my life. I'll never forget it. We went on at like 1 o'clock in the morning, and the vibe was just nuts.
Man.
It was electric. So the encore is Larry Graham, I Want to Take You Higher. And I'm supposed to be gone 4 songs. And I can't take it. I said, man, I'm going up there and playing with Larry Graham. They were like, no, this is Larry. He's playing bass. We're not going to have a bass player. And I went and told the front of house guy, I said, man, because he's standing up front. My riser is empty. And I said, man, keep me in the mix. Keep my line in the mix. I'm not going to get in the way. I'm playing up high, but I'm going back on stage when Larry Graham does the encore. They didn't know it. Zig didn't know it. And I just played like a staccato kind of guitar part, but I did the encore and I played with Larry Graham.
Was Larry cool with it once he turned around and saw
He didn't even know. They didn't know any difference.
He didn't even know. Okay, cool.
No, he didn't even know. I'm sure he would have been.
Good for you, man. Yeah, sometimes you just got to say what the fuck,
Yeah. And he was awesome. He was awesome in rehearsals, man. He was very kind and very aware that I was the other bass player in the room. And there was at least one time when he walked in and everybody swarmed around him, and he left that group to come over and say good morning to me and Zig.
Oh, so he was a pro. He was a total pro. That's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. So the thing he did with I'm Glad Graham you play, that's just positioning for this.
Yeah, no. That may have been more how I'm telling the story. But I mean, he basically was like, no, I'm a solo artist. This is not. I don't want to spend 45 minutes playing Bang a Gong with Billy Idol and then come out and do, you know. And I was like, man, hell yes, I'm playing Bang a Gong. I'll do it.
Yeah. Dude, let me ask you a question. Did that whole place stink like weed for like however many days that was?
It stunk like everything you can imagine.
I can't imagine.
I've never seen anything like that in my life. It was really
my
great
daughter
experience.
goes to those festivals.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and she comes home and she's like, I have to go on this, you know, and she's like totally clean. And I'm like, how do you do this? She goes, I'm so gross, please.
Yeah. It's pretty gross, man.
Especially, it's not like it's cool. It's not like it's
No.
Oregon. You're sweating in Tennessee, man, in the summertime or in the spring.
And those kids have been out there all day long.
Yeah.
You know, the Super Jam, we didn't go on until I think we walked on stage at 1 o'clock in the morning.
You had to be so pumped up.
Yeah, it was bizarre because we had rehearsals that morning at noon in a Holiday Inn, you know, banquet hall. So we'd been on site since 10, 11 in the morning.
Wow.
Really cool experience. I'll never forget it. But that came from Oates.
Yeah. Yeah.
All of these things, you know, don't burn a bridge. Don't burn a bridge unless you know you never want to go back. You know?
You don't seem to be. Are you the guy? You don't seem to be the guy that burns bridges, though.
No.
I mean, you might have burned one or two in your career, but that's a long life to burn one or two.
No,
you don't seem like that guy.
No, I don't do that, man. I'm such a people pleaser kind of guy to my own detriment. Sometimes, you know, I'm the guy that makes sure, hey, I know I'm leaving. I try to make everything as comfortable as I can for whoever's coming in.
All right. So Peter Frampton, you came on that gig initially as a sub. What are some of the cool things that you've experienced while playing with Peter?
Oh, I've experienced things on that gig, literally that I had dreamed about when I was 10 years old. I mean, guys our age, you know, he was the biggest thing in the world when I was 10 years old. And I came on that gig to do New Year's Eve of last year, of 2019. Yeah. I got a phone call in December saying that they needed somebody. At that point, it was about maybe 2 weeks notice, 3 weeks notice. We did New Year's Eve. It was great. It was like a 5-song set.
Where was that?
It was in Nashville.
Okay.
It was in Nashville, which was awesome.
Is he a long-time Nashville resident?
He is. He lived here 20 years ago and then moved to Cincinnati for a while, and then he's been back here probably 10 years.
Dude, how do you move from Nashville to Cincinnati? Nothing against my Ohio listeners.
He was married at the time to a Cincinnati native.
Oh, right.
Who wanted to be back, you know, around her family.
Yeah.
And then that, you know, took its course, and so then he moved back to Nashville.
Yeah.
But there were all kinds of great things on that gig, man. You know, I played Madison Square Garden, which I'd never done. I'd never been to Madison Square Garden.
That's awesome.
We played the Forum. I'm in the dressing room at the Forum, and he knocks on the door, and Ringo Starr walks in. It was unbelievable. And the cool thing one of the coolest things about the Frampton gig was that the rest of his band had been there for 10, 12, 15 years already. So I'm the new guy. Right? Yeah. I haven't heard any of his stories. They've all heard all his stories. Oh
yeah. So that was cool.
So and for real, the first record I bought with my own money was the record before Frampton Comes Alive called Frampton.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was 10 years old, I was Frampton fanatic. And I knew all this shit about him then, you know, and all this inside stuff. And so we'd get on the bus after the gig and he'd go, oh yeah, oh, well, Steve hadn't heard this one.
And so he would
start telling stories. And
that's
I was
cool, man.
Fully engaged. It was incredible. It was such a great experience. And I have so much respect for that guy. He's the real thing. I really never heard him. He always played in his voice, but I never heard him play the same thing twice on a solo wise. I watched that guy walk out on musical limbs and slip and fall off and immediately get back up. And it was just like part of the process. And that's not something that I have been used to doing. That's not a muscle that I've exercised in my career a lot, because most of the stuff I've done has been go in as a gunslinger and do your thing and shoot and cut and dry, and that's it. I haven't had a lot of gigs where I've had to just be free and let it and experience what was happening in that kind of sense. And so it was a lesson in playing those songs and doing justice to those songs that we all love.
Yeah, when you're playing, do you feel like we do? That has got, like, for the first few times, especially.
Oh my God!
That's got to be like the best experience in the world.
Yes, yeah. And it's one of the coolest things about having done this for so long and then doing a gig like that is when I played Do You Feel with him the first time at this New Year's Eve gig, which was being televised. The whole gig, I'm so focused on the songs and the song forms. And of course, it's a gig, so shit is going to happen. He's jumping a verse here. He's skipping a verse. And so my radar is just going nuts. And then we get to Do You Feel, which is the last song of the set. And I let all of that go. And for the next, 17 minutes or however long he wants to play, I'm just appreciating the entire experience, man.
You're like, got to be like a kid again.
Oh, it was incredible. It was incredible. And then he asked me to go play a couple one-song things with him at that NAMM show in 2019.
Oh, man, that's great.
And then at those shows, he asked me if I wanted to do this tour, which was going to start in June. And I really honestly thought about it. I didn't jump on it because I have been really nervous always, really hesitant always to get lost on the road. Not because I'm opposed to doing that, but that means, you're fading from this other scene.
Yeah, you can't be two places. You can't be visible in two places at once.
Yeah. And this was an instance where I thought, no, I can't miss this, man. This is such a full circle thing to me as a musician. Since years before I ever thought I was going to play bass, I knew that I was going to be a professional musician. One of the only ways that I could get to it was the radio and my turntable, and I was playing his records and going, oh, that's what I want to do. And so I thought, this is when I'm going to take advantage of this and say, screw all this other consideration. This is important to me personally.
And it's like two-week tours. It was supposed to be two. That's not a lot of time.
Well, no, that was what we were supposed to do this year.
Yeah.
We were gone last year. We were gone. It was very busy. It kept me with about a week, a month free from June until October. And in one of those weeks was the only times that the Wallflowers were working. And so the first break that Frampton took, I stayed out and flew to the Northeast and did like 7 days with Wallflowers.
Wait a minute. Were you in that band? Were you down here like 2 years ago at the Margarita Festival?
I'm sure I was.
Yeah, because I was hanging out with Stanton is a guitar player there, right?
Oh yeah,
Stanton and Jimmy.
Yeah, man, I was there.
Yeah, that's so funny, man. It was pouring. It was terrible rain. The sky opened up, man.
I'm sure that I was there.
That's wild.
The only times that I really have missed that gig were last year when we were on the Frampton.
That's what they sounded great, man.
Yeah, man.
That band was tight, man. And then there was one thing though. Jacob, the crowd got all pissed because he said it's great to be here in Miami. And we're in Tampa, and everybody was like, and not because Tampa people are it's pretty mellow here. This is not Miami, and everybody was booing. I was like, whoa, that's, just relax, man. They don't realize that like you don't know where you are, and like literally, So it was but it was a great gig, man.
Yeah, man, I'm sure that I was at that gig.
That's so funny.
And, you know, the drummer, Lynn Williams, played drums in Leroy's band.
Oh, so you're an old rhythm section, man.
Oh,
like
yeah,
very
man.
tight. You guys must be very tight.
Yeah, that's part of the reason those gigs are so fun.
Now, who subbed for you when you were out?
Oh, our friend the Stantons.
Okay. Yeah, right on, man. I'm still thinking about Peter. Bitch, you made me move to Cincinnati, you know.
Yeah. Right. Okay, this is not going to work out. All right, cool.
I even moved to Cincinnati. Man, any other gigs that you want to talk about that were fun or cool, or you just like nostalgic or good memories?
That's probably got it.
Yeah, that was great, man. Thank you. Steve, 3 favorite sessions you've played.
There are so many.
Yeah.
There are so many, and not necessarily because of the music or who you're working for. It's more than not. It's who you're working with.
Yeah.
They're most of the time. We're really fortunate. They're so fun. One thing that I'll say without hesitating at all is I got to do a session with Dolly Parton where she was recutting. I was playing upright, and she was recutting a song that she had done in the 60s called Put It Off Until Tomorrow. And the vocal that they wound up using was the track vocal, what they thought was going to be the scratch vocal. And Pig Robbins, who was the original, what they call the original Nashville A-Team.
Now, he was blind, that guy, right?
Yes, he's blind. He's a piano player. He was playing piano.
Oh, my God.
And Lloyd Green.
Yeah, steel player.
Yes, okay, Lloyd Green was playing steel.
Holy smokes.
And so playing that country, that for real, no bullshit country music with Dolly Parton in your headphones, it was a transcendent moment, and I will never forget it. And I'm so happy that I appreciated every second of it the whole time.
Lloyd Green's a monster, man.
Yes, yeah, he was a great guy. There was that session. We did a record. The only time that I've ever gone out of town to record was a few years, was in the late 90s. After I had left Lee Roy Parnell, I still played on his records for years after that.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, man, that says a lot, because he's a guy that does. Yeah, yes, that says a lot, man.
We're all close friends still.
That's very cool.
But we went to Muscle Shoals for a week, and we stayed, we kind of camped out at Muscle Shoals Sound. And that's the only experience I've ever had like that. That's one of my favorite experiences in the studio, because we'd roll in whenever we wanted and work as late, as we wanted. There was that. Another great session. This is a funny story. Another great session. I was so thrilled to work with Stan Lynch. You know Stan Lynch?
No, I don't.
The Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. And
okay. Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Don Henley, incredible songwriter, producer.
Yep.
He's done all kinds of shit. Well, past Petty and the Heartbreakers, but that's why everybody knows him. I've done a few sessions with him, and we were working on this project. You'll love this, man. And I'm being cool, I'm being professional and everything, but in my mind, I'm like, fuck, this is Stan Lynch. I want this guy to call me back. I want to have a connection with this guy. So I'm playing to what I feel within the song is I'm playing to the highest of my ability. I'm fucking killing it in my mind.
Yeah.
So, and he's a very passionate guy. If he likes what you're doing, he's in your face, telling you, screaming that he likes it. And if he doesn't like something that happens, he's in your face screaming that he hates it. He's that kind of guy. He's a really big guy. Anyway, so we get through this take, and he just goes, he said, man, this is not where it needs to be. It just needs to be you need to be 15 years old, you don't know how to play, just caveman, knuckle dragging, rock and roll, you know, just like the dumbest shit that you think you can play. And then he looks at me and goes, don't change a thing. You're killing it. And I went, oh, fine. Okay. I'm going to take that as a compliment.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Can you say who this session was for?
It was for two guys, songwriters that he knew, Britton Cameron, who may be from Tampa or Jacksonville around there. Britton Cameron and Jack Sizemore.
Okay. So
it was, and he'd known those guys. They were kind of a duo. They were all songwriting partners. And it was a project, I think, for them that never wound up coming out.
And you're killing it. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it was like, you know, you guys just need to play as dumb as you can possibly be. You don't change a thing. You're doing great.
That's funny, man. And you probably talk. I had a question, 3 favorite tours, but I would assume is, well, you tell me, go ahead. I don't want to assume anything.
Well, the Frampton one, obviously, for me. The Frampton one and the Wallflower tours. Some of the Wallflower tours have been my favorites because that was really the first opportunity that I had to do something that wasn't Music Row related.
Yeah.
And that's something that if you're in the scene, I mean, there's so much more happening here now, but if you've come up in this scene when I have, there aren't a lot of those kind of opportunities. Absolutely. And so when you latch onto something like that, it's just a little like, okay, this is the outside world. I can do okay in the outside world too.
Some great players, man. All those guys. I mean, it was a great band. That was just a phenomenal. Band.
And Trisha's gig has been one of my favorites. I mean, Trisha's gig, we're the same age. We have the same musical influences. Her gig, the players are phenomenal, like the first-class players in her band. And we would go play a gig and it would sound like a record. Man, she just wants to be Linda Ronstadt anyway. You know what I mean? So we'd go on stage and play, and the gig would sound like a record, and then we'd get back on the bus and pop a bottle of wine and just tell stories all the way down the road. I mean, almost every night was like that. And so that's been one of my favorite experiences professionally.
That's another good crew. You've been on some good crews, man.
Yes, absolutely. I'm very, very fortunate.
That Johnny had one of the best stories, just his personal story. Johnny Garcia.
Incredible. Yeah, you talked to Johnny?
Yeah, I mean, his parents were migrant fruit pickers.
Yes.
I mean, what a story that guy had, man. It's pretty impressive. Yeah. All right, you grew up in West Virginia, right? What was your childhood like?
My childhood was it was a very simple, very fun childhood. I think it probably, because of where I grew up, it probably, like, say, the mid-'70s probably was a little bit more like 4 or 5 years before that. Mm-hmm. It was a very kind of rural, very country setting. We, in the summers, we had a little, my parents, we lived in the country anyway, but in the summers, my parents had a little shack, and we would go down there and spend the summers, and there was no phone. My dad had a phone that he would, like, plug into the box, you know, and rip the line from the box. And that's, if you need to make a phone call, that's what you did. We didn't have TV in this place. Yeah. And we would just swim in the river and go fishing and, you know, run around in the woods. That was kind
brothers
of
and sisters?
Yes, I have a younger brother. And, it was very kind of play football and run around in the woods, very country, kind of simple. Big family. My mom came from a big family, so we lived next door to my grandparents. Oh, so you had tons of cousins and everybody over all the time? Yeah, there was always big family gatherings. There was always music around. I didn't play bass until I was in high school, but I taught myself how to play acoustic guitar. My mom played in church. Okay. She taught lessons in the house, taught piano lessons. My dad, I found out later, was had been known as a kid for being a musician. So it was there were musical things around. I mean, at a certain point when I was about 10 years old, I was just in my room glued to the radio and the turntable and playing acoustic guitar. And we were very involved in church. And that's kind of where, you know, I could take my guitar and play.
I've talked to so many people that started their career in church.
Yeah.
So many. I mean, it was vital as a musical stepping stone for so many people.
Absolutely. Man. Absolutely. It wasn't, my mom was a very legit, she was a very good musician. At one point, she could sight read pretty well, like right hand, left hand, and pedals.
That's pretty bad.
But if she didn't have music, she didn't know what to play. So
she wasn't like any improv, it was all reading.
No,
that's
all
interesting.
Reading. Yeah. Very legit, very kind of square.
Yeah, that's interesting. What it's funny when you said you lived in the country, but then you had a place that was even more rural in the summertime.
Yeah. To you it would have been, oh my God, I can't believe, whoa, what are you know?
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. I don't regret it. I don't regret a thing. I mean, when I left there to go to Boston,
that was probably
it was culture shock.
Yeah,
it was culture shock. We hadn't even heard of Berklee. You know,
how did you get hip to that?
I had a teacher that when I was 16, he was probably 25. And his first job was teaching at my high school. And he had graduated from Berklee.
Okay.
And he's the guy that had me start playing bass. Did we lost it?
No, we're here, man.
Okay, cool. I'm going to decline this. Let me get back in. Back to meeting.
Oh, that's weird.
Sorry, somebody buzzed in on a phone call and my screen went nuts. So I had a teacher that was about 25 years old and very cool. He had just graduated from Berklee. And he had me start playing bass because people knew me as the guitar player. I was the guy that carried acoustic guitar everywhere. He turned me on to Marcus Miller and Jaco Pastorius. And when I was a senior in high school and all I needed to graduate was an English credit, he was the guy that said, you're not going to screw around down here in band room all day long. If you're down here, you're going to work. And he enrolled me in a Berklee correspondence course. And
the summer course that they have?
It wasn't during the summer. It was a correspondence course that they had that I could work on during the school year.
That's unheard of.
It was incredible. He was such a huge influence on me. And he basically went to my parents and said, if there's any way that you can send him here, this is where he needs to go. And we looked into it, and it was a famous school. It had this big reputation. And so we found money, and my parents drove me up there and dropped me off. And that was my first lesson in dive in the deep end.
Yeah.
I was scared to death. But I had wanted to leave home. I mean, I was counting the days until I could leave home just to go anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, and that's so valuable for somebody to leave their home and be exposed to other cultures and other people. And it's the framework of who I am today is leaving home at 17, 18 years old and going into the real world. And the guys that I met immediately up there, I couldn't even really play. And the guys that I met and fell in with and learned how to play around were guys from DC, Baltimore, New York. It was trial by fire, and I recommend it to anybody. And I tell my kids now, you can always come home. You're always welcome to come home, but leave immediately.
Yeah.
Leave the minute you can, just for yourselves to go see what else is out there.
Are there guys you went to school with that you're still buddies with?
You're probably my closest friend that I've still really been in touch with is Jay Belrose, one of my favorite drummers. I go to, I stay with him a lot of times.
He's in L.A., isn't he?
He's in L.A.
Yeah, right.
He's in L.A. and we've kept in touch, these whole years. And I have a roommate. I had a roommate up there who I still am really close to touch with, Eric Fontana, who has played with Clarence Clemens for a while and done all kinds of stuff. And it's interesting to see him because now he's got a young family and he's moved into, he's really into like music therapy and helping people that way. And it's awesome. So I'm still in touch with some people.
That's cool,
the social media thing has been great because I've gotten back in touch with some of my friends, and it's nice to see them and their families and what they're doing gig-wise. And when I was in, my friend Dave DeLome was doing a show in some big house band in LA at NAMM last year. And it was like Nathan East was a band leader and all kinds of guys. And I just texted him and said, DeLome, I'm in town. I'm running to a show, but I'm going to run by your stage long enough to hug your neck and say hi. And how's the family? Everybody cool? All right.
That's cool. That's what you should use social media for, man. I cannot take the toxicity on there. People are just, I like, honestly, man, if I didn't have to like promote my show, there's some days I would delete my Facebook account.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there's somebody put, I guess like Reverb increased their fees.
Yes.
Right. So, okay, nobody's happy about paying more money, but it's went from 3.5% to 5%. It's not, I mean, and they're getting paid. I mean, like, shut the fuck up. I just like scrolling some posts and these assholes. Like,
I know, man. Well, it just encourages you to, it's just feeding your own ego. I mean, you can't put it through any other filter other than yourself anyway. And it just makes everybody feel like they're a little more important than they should be, maybe. You know what I mean?
Why would you have to, like, is that really that you got to occupy your time with that?
Yeah.
Surely, man, like go hug your kid or something. I mean, like you're going to like, and then of course 3 other more. And it's not just like, man, Reverb, it's like these demons from hell. How dare they, like, whoa, man, fucking take your foot off the gas pedal here, man. This is not like your life's not over. I mean, like no one's going to get hurt here.
I know, man. It takes effort. It takes effort to like avoid that kind of stuff.
It does,
but
man.
You can use it to keep up with your family and with your
friends. That's what it's perfect for.
Some of the, like my childhood friends who I kind of left as soon as I could. And
you're like a celebrity to them, I bet.
Probably in some respects. Yeah. But one of the cool things, that's happened for me as far as keeping up with some of my childhood friends on social media is that last year, I mean, we're all still the same people.
Yeah.
And last year I'd be running through town, maybe close to one of them on this Frampton tour. And I was able to share that with some of them.
That's
and it wasn't like, and it's not like, I'm not coming in big dogging anybody. I'm like, holy shit, you believe that you got to come check this out, come backstage. They're excited by whatever.
That is so cool, man. And the average person never, ever, ever, ever gets to go backstage.
Right.
And you're letting, I remember the first time I got to go backstage because I met somebody from the show and that was like, oh my God. And then like I had been to 20 shows backstage already. Right. And then I brought my wife to a show and she's like, oh my God, I've never, because usually I go with my son, but Ann came with me for some reason, which was great. I was so happy. And she's like, oh my God, this is so cool. So the regular person, that is really a great experience, man.
Yeah. You're on the other side of it. And it was really fun to be, you immediately move back into that relationship that you had growing up because I imagine it's like this anywhere, but from where I grew up, we were all really tight. I mean, that's all we had. That's all you have when you're kids is your other friends that you do things with. I mean, coming up in school and just growing up and it was awesome to bring them backstage and watch them go, oh, this is what it is. And it was at the same time I could go, holy shit, isn't this cool? You're going to be standing right there. Peter Frampton's going to be standing right there. And then at the same time go, okay, see, it's not that big a deal. We're sitting on this picnic bench and we're going to go get some, have a sandwich and catering. It's not that big a deal.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's just a fun experience.
Yes. And it was,
it's because you don't, the average person doesn't get to do it a lot,
Right.
It's like if you can, it's just being a part of an insiders group that you don't normally get to belong to. And that's the fun of it. It's like, wow, I'm being let into this little, little thing here. That's
and
nice.
It helped me because, it's really easy after doing this for a living and concentrating on the career and the industry and all that kind of stuff. And it helped me to go, yeah, this is super cool. Share this with me.
And you got to,
share this with me and you can see how cool it is. And I can remember how cool it is.
That's nice, man. That's very nice, man. Low points, Steve, any low point? How'd you get through some of the low points, or what were some of the low points and how'd you get through them?
Well, we talked about the Mike Ness. That's been that was a huge one. And I don't know.
Do you want me to, if I do speak to Mike, do you want me to say something to him?
Oh, no, he wouldn't remember me.
Mike,
I mean, it literally was 3 hours.
You crushed a buddy of mine. I need an apology from you before we go forward. Should have taken this guy. He had combat boots on that he bought especially. You might be tattooed like head to toe now if you had gotten that.
I know it would be.
Yeah.
It would be. I don't know anything other than to just lower my head and get up and keep moving forward. That's what I have always done in low points. Yeah. I hit a low point. I don't know if it was like a midlife thing or what the deal was. I mean, one of the things that has happened to me after being here for 30 years is a couple different times I have seen people who are friends of mine now, and this is to take nothing away from them, but I've seen people come in that were new faces and that got work because they were just somebody new, and it was new energy, and maybe a songwriter or producer that I was working with, that I've been working with for years, got turned on to this new bass player that was in town. And they ate into the work that I had at the time. I've seen that happen 2 or 3 times, and I haven't done anything except just gone, okay, that's going to happen. You just get up and you keep moving forward. Mm. And a lot of times that same work has come back around a couple of years later. You start to learn to not take that personally, and to learn that if you're anxious, whatever anxiety you have about how do people perceive you in your career, and what do other people think of you? Man, nobody's thinking about you. They're all thinking about themselves, just like you're thinking about yourself. And so what worked for me, there are probably quicker ways to get through it, but what works for me is just moving forward.
Yeah.
Today is a bad day. Run that day down and get up and start again. Move forward. Don't stop. And don't live in that bad day that you just had. It's gone.
It's funny. Yesterday was a difficult day for me. It wasn't bad, but I just had a couple of things that like dragged me down. I haven't done this in ages, man. I took a shower before. I usually shower first thing in the morning. I showered before I went to bed. I'm old enough now to know. I said, you know what? I'm going to shower and it's going to like free me. And it did. It was really weird, man. I was like,
it's interesting how and at this point at our age, you start to know things about like, oh, okay, this is what this means.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this. And, honestly, I don't, I have been in my life a fairly anxious person.
Mm.
Just general anxiety, especially being in this kind of a business and being the sole breadwinner in a family of 4. And
brother, I know what it's like.
And I have been used to that kind of thing. And I have found the older that I get, I need to conserve my energy, man. I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that bullshit. I need my energy for other things.
It's funny. I knew somebody who was going to in NA towards the program, and he was riddled with anxiety about. He was always concerned what other people thought, and he told me that the most important, like early on in the program, the most important thing he learned is his sponsor told him, he goes, man, no one's going to bed thinking about you.
Right.
And he goes, really? He goes, yeah, nobody is going to bed thinking, I wonder what so-and-so is doing right now. I said, they're all worried about themselves. Yeah. Everybody's just trying to get through the day.
Right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. And he said that was the best information that he ever got out of the program.
Yeah.
Or one of the many things.
Yeah. I think part of the thing too is you just have to learn, especially for somebody who's prone to anxiety. You cannot control everything.
You cannot control anything.
Anything, really. I mean, as much as I have tried to do that, and I think maybe that a result of that has been positive for me, because that's maybe part of the reason why I have jumped and had so many different artists and people that I've worked with, because that's where I see my security, Because something's going to fall out, so you can't control it.
Absolutely.
Something's going to happen here, and something's going to happen here, and I let it work. I make it work for me as best I can.
Man, this guy told me something a while back, about sometime in the last year, and I've adopted it, and it's been massive for me. He said, "Don't be part of the results committee."
Wow, that's pretty smart. I get that. I totally get that.
And I was like, "Oh my God, I'm done."
Yeah.
And it honestly, it was like a 1,000,000-pound weight lifted off my chest. Cause now I just have to worry about me, do the work.
Right.
Cause I'm the same way as you. I want X, I expect X, why doesn't this, I just let it go. Let it all go. I mean, it didn't happen overnight. It happened a period of work I was doing on myself.
Yeah. And you still have to remind yourself to do that even now.
Absolutely. But having that as the foundation of, I'm not part of the results committee. I don't have to, whatever happens. Right. It's up to my higher power, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
And so I'm just doing the work, hoping for the best. And if not, okay, another adventure.
Right. Right. And, I got some comfort out of learning. I can't remember what situation, if I was listening to an interview or what it was, but they were talking about these great actors that we love. And I think it was maybe even somebody like Jack Lemmon, who just went and did his thing and couldn't watch himself on screen. And so he would get hired to do this gig that we're all watching years later and saying, oh my God, look at this acting. And this cat couldn't even watch himself. And so he just resigned himself to doing his craft and then moving on to the next thing and let you appreciate it. He's
leave it out for somebody else. Yeah, man. I think stuff like that is helpful for me. Definitely, man. I don't want to, because you become invested in it and then you start like, why did this happen? Why didn't this happen?
Right.
Where did I fuck up? Man, it's not, everything is about me.
Right. I tell my kids, I have told both my kids plenty of times, you are not going to be lacking for people in the world trying to knock you down.
Yeah.
You don't need to knock yourself down.
Bingo.
Somebody's going to do that. Somebody's going to be trying to do that eventually anyway.
Yeah, man.
You need the strength to fight against that.
It's important you tell kids that, because I think as raising my kids, man, I sound like an old man again. Most parents do not say that. They just tell you, you're so wonderful. You're so wonderful. That's nice, but let them fail. And then,
it's important.
Let them do shit. Nobody lets their kids do anything today.
That's a hard thing to do. I'm sure like the first time you saw your kid, kids failing at something, you want to help it. You want to.
I never thought I was, for whatever reason, I never thought, you know what? I did everything way on the other side, like unreasonably so.
Right.
So I just figured, man, I'm backing so far off the gas pedal. It's going to be fine.
Yeah.
So it's like, I learned what not to do. So I didn't go there. And I said anything like north of that is a home run.
Yeah,
so it was probably a little
bit of that.
A little easier for me to see that. But they know you're there for them, and that's all that counts. And now, like I said, they're 30 and 28. Now they call me up all the time. It feels great. Like, hey, Dad, I need to talk to you about something.
Right, they got that foundation.
Yeah, but I'm so happy because, all these years you're like, Dad, you're an asshole. You're an asshole. Now it's like, Dad, I need to call you, and it's like,
right.
that makes my day, man.
Yeah.
Anything you haven't done yet musically that you'd like to, besides getting back to play?
Yeah, that's what we all want to do.
Yeah.
I think, you know what, man? Jill Scott lives in Nashville.
Okay.
I want to play with Jill Scott.
Man,
I'm going to put that out there.
I'm embarrassed. Who's Jill Scott? But I do want to.
Jill Scott is incredibly talented singer, songwriter, artist. Originally from Philadelphia. R&B. She's a great actress as well, but very much an artist. And she moved to Nashville, I heard a couple years ago, and I thought, okay, sometime I'm going to run into Jill Scott. I haven't done anything like that, really. I haven't done any kind of R&B gigs. I was really happy. I played on the India RE record probably 15 years ago, and I was so thrilled when that happened, because in Nashville, in the mainstream kind of Nashville thing, those opportunities don't come up that much.
Did you have flashbacks to the surfer bus thing?
Yeah, I was all in.
Man, well, let's put Jill, if you're listening, if you're a friend of Jill's, if you're Jill's manager, if you're her guitar player, her drummer,
right.
Man, you got an excellent, come on, listen to this guy. There's nobody cooler, man. And you want someone holding down the rhythm section. This guy keeps time like a Swiss watch. I gave it my all, man. That's it, man. First record you ever bought by yourself?
The first record I ever bought with my own money was Peter Frampton.
That's right. You said that. That is wild. Did you tell him that?
I did not tell him that.
Yeah, I could see that being a little bit like.
You know what, man? It was so hard. The first 6 weeks probably that I was on that bus listening to him talk, it was constantly running through my mind. I mean, I wasn't afraid to talk, and I came into the conversation, but I dipped in and out. I was the new guy.
Yeah.
The rest of these guys had been living together for 10, 15 years. I made a very conscious effort not to dive in. Eventually, he has to know. He has to know how much of a fan and how much of an influence that he was on me as a young kid. Because eventually I was deep in the weeds with him on his own history.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
But I never did tell him. I thought about it, and I almost did a couple times. And I thought, you know what, man, I was 10 years old. Of course I felt like that. You know, I'm a grown man, and I'm on his gig, and I'm his bass player. And, you know, he probably knows it already just because of our conversations.
He's going to be on my show one day, and that's the first thing. Yeah. That's the first thing I'm going to tell him.
Yeah.
Did you know Mackey?
Right.
All right. That's what I'm going to tell him.
Did you know I can name all his tabloid girlfriends from 1976?
I'll tell him. Give me your top 3 Desert Island discs, Steve. No particular order, just for this minute.
Just for this minute. NRBQ at Yankee Stadium.
That's come up a couple of times.
Ricky Lee Jones, Chucky's in Love.
That was a good record.
Donny Hathaway live.
So you really are an R&B guy.
Oh yeah, man. That's what I love. That's what I've always loved.
Remember I told you those conversations with my kids last week? My young one's like, Dad, who's this guy, Donny Hathaway? He sounds pretty good.
My God.
I said, you're on the right path, my son.
It's such a, man, it'll blow your, it blows your whole mind open. You know, that's R&B music, black music. That's American music.
I love that stuff.
You know,
man.
That's American. I'm all in on all of it. And I have such an appreciation now for real country music that I didn't have when I first moved here. I love listening to jazz. I don't like playing jazz because I don't have the vocabulary, and I know too many people who do. I know what it's, you know, I know too many people that can really play.
Yeah. And
should be playing that. And that, you know, and coming up playing R&B from any era, has really helped me in what I do in Nashville. Just as I've been in situations where I have brought at least some kind of interpretation of groove that may not have been there with somebody else who didn't come up like that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's
funny. You almost have more like a Philly background than a West Virginia background.
Well, because I didn't really play until I moved to the Northeast.
Yeah, right. Okay. You just practiced. Yeah.
I mean, I didn't own a bass until the month before I moved to Boston.
That's incredible. Man, that says a hell of a lot about your natural talent, man.
A high school. Yeah. And it's been, I've always been gifted with a really good natural ear.
That's wonderful.
It's floated me through a couple times when I probably should have done a little more work, but I learned how to play when I moved to Boston. So I was around a different kind of musician up there.
That's wonderful, man. What makes you happy?
Oh, what makes me happy is...
I'm going to ask you the tough ones, Mackey.
It makes me happy to know... it makes me happy to know that my family is okay. It makes me happy to know that I am providing for my family at the same time that I'm doing the only thing that I've ever imagined that I could do, that I would do. I've never done anything else. I'm grateful for it, and I'm scared to death about that at the same time. But that makes me happy. A great drummer makes me happy.
Who's some of the drummers that you like playing with?
I knew that was going to get me.
Yeah, well, since you mentioned it,
I'm going to lead to there. I have Zig. Playing with Zig Modeliste. Playing with Zigaboo Modeliste was an incredible experience. Playing with the guys that were doing records when I first moved here, like guys who I've developed relationships with and close friendships with since then, like Greg Morrow, Chad Cromwell, my friend Lynn Williams that I've played with for 25 years.
That's the guy in the Wallflowers.
Yes.
Yeah.
That played in Lee Roy's band.
Yeah.
The younger guys that are doing records now, like Evan Hutchings and Miles McPherson and Jerry Rowe, there are great musicians all over the place.
Yeah.
I've gotten to be really close friends with Near, and I've done a lot of working with Near, and
he's a great guy, man.
That's awesome, man. And now he's my racquetball nemesis. And have you talked to Nick Buda?
To who?
Nick Buda is a drummer in town that I have done a lot of playing with, and I've found musical connections with all these guys.
Dude, I've got to come up there and smoke a cigar with you and and go do some bass fishing. That is the best.
Yeah.
That's like, that's to me, that's like the most relaxing thing you could do is fish and smoke cigars, man. Like
it's
everything,
awesome.
Like it's impossible to get stressed out doing that, man.
It really is. It's like golf, but you don't have to walk.
It's like golf, only you don't have to walk. That's great, man.
There are so many great drummers. There's so many great drummers. Derek Phillips. Do you know Derek Phillips
no?
Or there's a guy in town, Thad Witherspoon, that I've played. I've just met all these young guys. They're drummers, monstrous drummers all over the place here.
I did have Jero's dad on the show.
Yeah, Dave. Oh, that's awesome.
He was the funniest human being on earth.
Yeah, he really is, man. Dave is a cat. I really look up to Dave. Dave is a guy that's been really great to me over the years.
Yeah. Most of the guys that I've met of our age group in Nashville are all really seemed to be really supportive and not like cutthroat. Maybe the younger cats are, I don't know, but like, I don't know. I've heard like Jeff King's a buddy of mine. I had heard countless.
Awesome.
He's just wonderful, man. I see how he is with me and just like my wife when we come in. It's just wonderful, man. You know, it's a great guy.
Yeah, great people. And that's how, people are on gigs. I mean, that's how you've got to be, really, if you want people to want to be around you anyway. But
but I think that's some of that's. Sorry, go ahead. I apologize. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's the music, because we have to devote it. It demands so much of our time. If you're doing it for a living, it's kind of like our social life. I have realized, especially being locked down, for better or for worse, my career is my social life. When I go to work every day, I'm hanging with my friends, and it's not like, it's not like we're on a factory line pumping out shit all day long.
Yeah.
We're hanging and we're joking and we're talking about, we're catching up with each other's families and what's going on in our life. And then when I leave work, that's when I go home and I'm with my family.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been my social life, and I love the people that I'm around.
Yeah.
When I'm doing what I do.
And I think kind of like the same way most good athletes have natural good hand-eye coordination. I think most good musicians naturally have those kinds of souls where you can, you're either balanced or you're more of a giver than a taker,
Yeah, I think that's right.
I think that's kind of a natural
And I
thing.
think that people like us that are vested in tapping into ourselves and our souls at a deeper level than you would do if you just had a job where you were in retail or something like that. Where it's not your job to tap into something deeper. I think the result of that is that we are people who are seekers. We're curious. We're curious about people we don't know about, things we don't know about, music that we don't know or could get turned on to.
Yeah.
It attracts that kind of person, and it encourages that thought.
I agree with you 100%. And I think it's the fact that you guys are making yourselves the kind of person that's willing to make themselves vulnerable to do that is, for me, nothing into, but it's a better quality person as far as they own their stuff a little better.
Sure, it can be. It can be.
So.
I mean, there are pitfalls too. There are pitfalls. When you open yourself up that much emotionally, you might fall to one side or the other. You might go off the rails. It might be a little more easy for you to go off the rails than we've all got. I think that happens with anybody who's working at this level, at a level where you're competing on a scale where we're an athlete, maybe on a professional team, or a musician who might be playing on a record that you would just turn on the radio and hear.
Yeah,
there's
different dynamics in the session world, I think. Yeah. Another tough question, man. What do you like most about yourself?
Oh man, I like that I'm passionate.
Right on, man. And what would your wife say she likes most about you?
I think she would probably say the same thing. I think that she would say, I'm not a guy who quits. Although I will quit out of spite. She just said, she tried to take me one time. She was, like crazy, devoted CrossFit person for a while. And I said, okay, take me out and let me, go see what this is about. And it's a total like kind of football team mentality. Yeah. You don't quit. Whatever you do, you don't quit. And she kept saying that to me she was working me out, which I never should have done. Should have just gone to a class or something. So we're outside and she's going, do another one, keep going. you can't quit. Whatever you do, don't quit. And I just finally was like, oh, really? You don't think I can quit? Watch this. I'm done. I'm out. You know, so, but she would say, at least as far as living my life and how I've lived my life, she would say I'm a person who does not give up.
Hey man, did she not know you're the guy who stood up in the van, sat up in the middle of the van in the middle of the night and said, guys, this is my 2 weeks notice?
Yeah.
That was great. Who's had the biggest influence on your life, musically and also personally?
That's tough. I have so many great friends, and I've learned so much from all of them. You know what? I think we talked about James Pennebaker.
Yeah.
I met James at a time when I was really one of the times in my life when I was really open. James is a Texas musician.
Mm-hmm.
Came up in that scene with Delbert McClinton and T-Bone Burnett and all the Fort Worth and Austin guys, and knew he was a guy that would tell you immediately if you were talking about Stevie Ray Vaughan. James was the cat that would say, yeah, but do you know Jimmy?
Okay.
And James Pennebaker was my roommate in Lee Roy's band. And we spent countless hours talking about music and him turning me on to music. He turned me on to Freddie King. He turned me on to blues music. And
he saw Freddie King, if I remember correctly.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he saw Freddie King plenty of times.
Mm.
And you know, Western swing and that whole scene, and it made a huge impression on me and made a huge impact on who I am as a musician.
That's nice, man.
I think personally, I've had great friends that have all made big impressions on me. I think my family probably have made the most positive impressions on me. Even extended family, cousins, people that I grew up with, people that are embedded in like my foundation. You know, those people are a big part of the reason why my character is whatever it is.
Do you have any hobbies outside of music?
I don't. I play racquetball.
Yeah, I saw that picture, man. That was quite funny.
I play racquetball, and it's turning out that I'm playing racquetball with more drummers than anybody else, and I don't know why it winds up like that. But yeah, man, the beautiful thing about it is, and I do this with my friend Nick Buda, and when we play games, it's like one of those old movie barroom saloon fights. I mean, we're just so, like, you fall down and you get up and you have just enough energy for a roundhouse punch, and then everybody falls back down and you get back up and go again.
That's a hell of a workout.
If I've got to say I have a hobby, that's it.
Favorite place you've traveled? You've probably been all over, I bet.
I've been all over. I like places that are very similar to where I grew up, which is in the mountains.
Yeah, that's.
I'm not a beach guy. I'm not a desert guy, really. I went to Scotland one time. I loved everything about it. I felt like, these are my people. You know, like in the Northwest, and like I ran Asheville, North Carolina, or I always thought if money wasn't an option, I could live anywhere I wanted. It would be like Hudson, like Lower Hudson Valley.
Oh, dude, it's gorgeous up there. Upstate New York.
Yeah, man.
I would live in upstate New York in a heartbeat, but it is freezing.
I know. That's the thing. The winters
so cold, man.
The winters are just a beast up there. But it's very similar in topography.
Yeah.
To where I grew up.
Yeah.
But you can hop on a train and in an hour you can be in New York City.
Be in the city. I know, man. It's the best.
I mean, that to me would be one of my favorite places in the country.
You know what I did one time? I went my older son, we flew into the city and we drove up to Woodstock. And we hung out at Woodstock for a couple of, just to see the campus. And then we just tooled around, hung around up there. And then we drove back into the city and we saw Government Mule in concert.
Wow.
That's
awesome.
That was like such a great weekend, man.
It's the best, man. It's the best.
And I love upstate, man. It's beautiful.
You know what? It's country up there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of scary country in places.
No, there's like a lot of serious rednecks up there, man.
Right.
People don't realize that. But it's an hour, 2 hours from the city, man. You can't beat that.
That's the best thing. I mean, I love where I'm from so much. If I could live there now, I have such a connection to that part of the world. If I could live there now, I would probably do it.
Do you still have a lot of family there?
I do. I just have a lot of family and a lot of friends there. Less as the years go on, but I wouldn't be able to be there permanently. I would have to leave. It's about 4 hours south of DC. So, I'd have to get out and get into some other stuff. But that type of environment really speaks to me, my speed, and I can
you mentioned at the same time you've mentioned New York a lot.
Yeah, well, it's all from when I was a kid, man, because I went right from there to immediately living in the middle of the city.
Yeah.
And this is all before I'm 20 years old.
Yeah.
So, your brain is taking in everything. I love so much about all of that stuff.
Right, right.
I think the older I get, the more I would fall into, a country kind of environment than a city. I don't have the passion for that in setting, the energy for that setting.
You need space, man.
Yeah,
I mean, there's no space in the city, man.
I mean, at this point, I'm just happy to go in and get something good to eat and play a good show and get back out.
Right. What's your favorite food in the city when you go in New York?
Any kind of ethnic food, man. The Indian food is always awesome. This is one thing about Nashville. Still, after all these years, there's no good Jewish deli anywhere.
I'm surprised because there's got to be a fairly good-sized Jewish population there.
Me neither. I know. They're eating biscuits. They're eating biscuits like everybody else.
That's funny, man. Hey, 2 more questions. And I got to tell you, man, I have enjoyed every minute with you, man. Thank you very much. You're very cool, dude, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
Toughest decision you've had to make or most difficult thing you've had to do?
I think this probably goes back to how I've gotten out of low points in my life. And I think as easy as it is for me to quickly say, just get up and keep moving forward, I think that's always the most difficult thing to do at the same time. I've made a couple tough decisions in my life career-wise. I don't really have any regrets. I appreciate what I have and where I'm at in my career right now. There was an opportunity early on for me to lead a talk show band one time. And I didn't do it. I chose not to do it. I think a big part of why I made that decision was out of fear. I think another big part of that decision was because I had an emotional attachment to the gig I was on that I probably should not have had.
Yeah.
And that talk show gig, even though it folded 3-4 months later, that was a time when I was afraid really to make that decision. It was a tough decision to say no to that. I really struggled with that. I can say what it might have led to. It would have thrown me into another world. I mean, as many times as I've jumped off into the deep end on stuff, there's been plenty of times when I went, oh, let me just play it safe. It feels much better over here. Maybe that's what I needed to do at the time.
It's funny. I learned so much from this that helps myself because I'm listening to you, and I've often I go back and look at scenarios like that. I should have done this. But I'm sitting here listening to you and I'm saying, you know what? There is no right or wrong sometimes. It's just shit you did. And
right.
but I could look at someone else's situation. I need to be like more kind to me. Like, Craig, you know, there is no right. You just did what you fucking did. And you know, you didn't die. Nobody else died. I mean, you know, who the hell knows? Maybe you saved yourself from getting in a plane crash or something. Who the hell knows? But it's so easy to be, it's much easier for me to be kind to others for some reason than myself.
No, absolutely. And that's like I'm sitting here listening to your stories about dealing with your kids, and in the back of my brain, I'm going, okay, to make a note of that, I'm going to do that.
I didn't tell you all the shit I've done wrong.
I might have fucked up a little bit on that one, but
we need another call for that. Trust me. And last question, biggest change in your personality, let's say over the last 10 years, Mackey, and how much of that has been intentional and how much has been just a part of aging?
I think the biggest change is, I think the biggest change for me in the past 10 years has been I'm a lot less hard on myself.
Good for you, man.
I give myself a lot more credit when I should get credit.
That's big, man.
That's a big move, and that also says how hard I am on myself sometimes.
No, but that's great that you do that. That's really cool.
I think part of that is because I don't want to live like a person who is stressed and anxious, and I've done that a lot, and I just don't want to do that. I just came, and it probably happened about 10 years ago. I just don't want to live the rest of my life like that. I'm tired of it. I want to put
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting. And I want to put my energy in other places. I don't have time for it. And I think part of it, maybe a smaller part, is just that, you know, you're getting older. You don't want to have the energy for that. It's bullshit anyway.
It is bullshit. Dude, it was so nice talking to you, man. Thank you for everything.
What a great conversation, man. I really enjoyed this.
Likewise. And let me summarize with some valuable lessons here today, boys and girls. First of all, they sent me back. This is classic. They sent me back to my Pulp Fiction hotel. That was maybe the best line I've ever heard. Don't quit. It's all compound interest. Compound English. Compound English. It's all compound.
It's compound English for us.
Compound English, yeah. Compound English. And then this was cool. Fishing is like golf, only you don't have to walk. And just get up and keep moving forward. And that's a great note to end this. Let me tell you guys where to find Steve Mackey. He's on Instagram. Follow him there at MackB15, MackB15, and it's Steve, Stephen. So if you see Steven, you know, but wait a minute, it says Steve on
the Instagram, I think, is under Steve. Yes.
Okay, it's MackB15.
Yeah.
Also, if you are interested in working with Steve and having him help you with some tracks, he's available to do that. He's got a home studio. He was just recording all day yesterday. The best way to do that would be to reach out to him on Instagram, let him know what you're looking for, the kind of help you're looking for, and so he can give him some links to your music or whatever, or whatever. Just give him some information so he could give you a proper response. Dude, you're good for my track. I mean, just like communicate. And
I can do all that.
Yeah, man. And also, once life gets back to normal, whatever that new normal is, Mondays, man, he's got a standing gig at the Bluebird, which is a pretty famous place in Nashville, with a band called Blue Bloods. And there's some killer musicians there every Monday night. So if you're in town in Nashville, go check him out.
Great musicians. Let me just say, that'll be me. Sometimes that'll be Michael Rhodes. Sometimes Rhodes, I'm usually there when he's not there.
Yeah,
I'm still there a lot.
Either way, from a bass standpoint, you won't go wrong.
Right,
but
that's exactly.
I don't know. I haven't spoke to Rhodes yet. You won't get the laughs maybe that you get out of this guy. I don't know. To be determined. Man, thank you again. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Craig. Man, what a pleasure.
hang on. Let me wrap this up. Anything else you want to promote or talk about that you got going on?
No, that's all good.
All right, man. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, please share it on your social media channels. We appreciate your support. Thanks very much to Steve Mackey for coming on the show. Again, MacB15 on Instagram. If you want to work with Steve on and have him help you do some tracks, just message him on Instagram. And if you're in Nashville or in town ever, check the Bluebird's really famous. Like I said, go to the Bluebird Cafe on a Monday night. You see the band Blue Bloods and shake his hand, tell him what a hero he is. And thanks for spending time with us. Everybody, and most important, man, especially nowadays, remember, most important, remember that happiness is a choice. So choose wisely. Be nice. Go play your guitar or your bass. Keep time and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I am out. Brother, thank you for everything.
Thank you, Craig.